Welcome to True Crime Threads, where every story unravels a web of secrets and lies. Today, we dive into the chilling tale of a woman who discovered her husband's double life and paid the ultimate price. Luna and Anthony had always been the couple everyone admired in their quiet, close-knit town. Married for over 25 years, they were in their early 50s and seemed to embody the kind of love and stability people aspired to. Luna, a retired schoolteacher, was known for her warm smile and gentle demeanor. She spent her days tending to her garden, volunteering at the local library, and baking treats for her neighbors. Anthony, on the other hand, was a successful real estate agent, charming and well-liked by everyone who crossed his path. Together, they lived in a beautiful home with a white picket fence, the kind of place that seemed plucked straight out of a storybook. For years, their life had been predictable in the best way. Weekends were spent hosting barbecues for friends or taking long drives through the countryside. Evenings often ended with the two of them curled up on the couch, watching old movies and laughing at inside jokes only they understood. To outsiders, their marriage was rock solid, a testament to enduring love. But lately, Luna had begun to notice small, unsettling changes in Anthony's behavior. It started with the little things. Anthony, who had always been punctual and reliable, began coming home later than usual. At first, he blamed it on work, a new client, a tricky deal, or an unexpected meeting. Luna didn't think much of it. After all, real estate could be unpredictable. But then there were the phone calls. Anthony, who had never been particularly secretive about his phone, suddenly became possessive of it. He would step out of the room to take calls or quickly silence his phone when it buzzed during dinner. Luna tried to brush it off, telling herself she was being paranoid. But the nagging feeling in her gut refused to go away. One evening, as they sat at the dinner table, Luna noticed Anthony's phone light up with a notification. He quickly flipped it over, but not before Luna caught a glimpse of the name on the screen: Aurora. The name meant nothing to her, but the way Anthony reacted made her heart sink. He excused himself from the table, claiming he needed to take an important call. Luna sat there, staring at her half-eaten meal, her mind racing. Who was Aurora? And why did Anthony seem so eager to hide her? Over the next few weeks, Luna's suspicions grew. She began paying closer attention to Anthony's habits. She noticed he was dressing more carefully for work, wearing cologne she hadn't seen him use in years. His credit card statements, which he usually left lying around, were now neatly filed away. One night, while Anthony was in the shower, Luna couldn't resist the urge to check his phone. Her hands trembled as she unlocked it, and her heart nearly stopped when she saw the message from Aurora. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, my love." The words felt like a punch to the chest. My love. Who was this woman? And how long had this been going on? Luna's mind raced with questions. But she knew she couldn't confront Anthony yet. She needed to be sure, to gather more evidence before she could face him. That night, as she lay in bed beside him, staring at the ceiling, Luna made a decision. She would find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Little did she know, her quest for answers would lead her down a path far darker and more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. Luna's discovery of the message from Aurora left her in a state of quiet turmoil. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and found herself constantly replaying the words in her mind. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, my love." The more she thought about it, the more she realized she couldn't let it go. She needed to know who Aurora was and what she meant to Anthony. Determined to uncover the truth, Luna began her investigation, though it felt foreign and unsettling to spy on the man she had trusted for over 2 decades. Her first step was to check Anthony's phone records. She waited until he was distracted, then quietly accessed their shared online account. Scrolling through the call logs, she noticed a pattern: a number that appeared frequently, often late at night or early in the morning. Luna's stomach churned as she realized these calls coincided with the times Anthony had claimed to be working late or running errands. She wrote down the number, her hand shaking as she did so. Next, she turned to their bank statements. Anthony had always handled their finances, but Luna had access to the accounts. She began combing through the transactions, looking for anything unusual. What she found made her heart sink. There were charges for expensive dinners at upscale restaurants, hotel stays in nearby cities, and even a weekend getaway to a luxurious resort. The dates matched the times Anthony had been away on business. Luna felt a mix of anger and disbelief. How could he have been so careless, so brazen? But more importantly, who was this woman who had seemingly taken over her husband's life? Luna decided to follow Anthony. It wasn't something she ever imagined herself doing, but she felt she had no other choice. One afternoon, after Anthony left for work, Luna discreetly followed him in her car. She kept her distance, her heart pounding as she tailed him through town. To her surprise, he didn't go to his office or meet with clients. Instead, he drove to a medical clinic on the outskirts of town. Luna parked a safe distance away and watched as Anthony walked inside, greeting the receptionist with a familiar smile. Her stomach twisted as she realized this wasn't his first visit. Curiosity and dread compelled Luna to investigate further. She waited until Anthony left, then approached the clinic herself. Pretending to be a potential patient, she asked the receptionist about the doctors who worked there. That's when she learned about Dr. Aurora Bennett, a 45-year-old cardiologist who had joined the clinic a year ago. The receptionist spoke highly of her, describing her as kind, intelligent, and deeply committed to her patients. Luna's mind raced. A doctor? Anthony was having an affair with a doctor. It seemed almost too surreal to believe. Luna's next step was to dig deeper into Aurora's background. She searched online and found Aurora's professional profile, complete with a glowing biography and a list of accolades. Aurora was not only respected in her field but also active in the community, often volunteering at health fairs and charity events. Luna felt a pang of jealousy mixed with confusion. How could someone so accomplished be involved with her husband? What did Aurora see in Anthony that made her willing to risk her reputation? As the days passed, Luna's investigation became all-consuming. She began following Anthony more frequently, documenting his movements and taking photos of his meetings with Aurora. She even went so far as to visit the restaurants and hotels where they had been together, piecing together the timeline of their affair. Each new discovery felt like a knife to her heart, but she couldn't stop. She needed to know the full extent of Anthony's betrayal. One evening, as Luna sat at her kitchen table surrounded by printouts, receipts, and photos, she realized she had enough evidence to confront Anthony. But instead of feeling relief, she felt a deep sense of dread. She knew that once she brought this into the open, there would be no going back. Her marriage, her life as she knew it, would be forever changed. Little did she know, the truth she was about to uncover would be far more shocking and dangerous than she could have ever imagined. The weight of the evidence Luna had gathered pressed heavily on her chest as she prepared to confront Anthony. She had spent weeks piecing together the puzzle of his affair, and now, with a stack of receipts, photos, and phone records in front of her, she felt both empowered and terrified. She knew this conversation would change everything, but she couldn't keep living in the shadow of his lies. That evening, after dinner, Luna took a deep breath and asked Anthony to sit down. She placed the evidence on the table between them, her hands trembling as she did so. At first, Anthony tried to brush it off, his face a mask of confusion and mild annoyance. He claimed the receipts were for business dinners, the hotel stays for client meetings, and the messages from Aurora nothing more than harmless flirting. But Luna wasn't buying it. She had done her homework, and she knew the timeline of his lies too well. She pushed back, pointing out the inconsistencies in his story and the sheer volume of evidence that pointed to an ongoing affair. Anthony's demeanor shifted, his confident facade cracking under the weight of her accusations. Finally, after what felt like hours of back and forth, Anthony broke. He admitted to the affair, his voice low and filled with a mix of guilt and defensiveness. He explained that Aurora had been a client at first, someone who needed help finding a new home after her divorce. Over time, their professional relationship had turned into something more. He claimed it wasn't planned, that it had just happened, but Luna could hear the hollowness in his words. She felt a surge of anger and betrayal, but also a strange sense of relief. At least now she knew the truth. Luna demanded that Anthony end the affair immediately and recommit to their marriage. She wasn't sure if she could ever fully trust him again, but she was willing to try for the sake of the life they had built together. Anthony hesitated, his silence speaking volumes. He claimed he needed time to figure things out, to sort through his feelings. Luna's heart sank. She had expected remorse, a willingness to fight for their marriage, but instead, she was met with uncertainty. It was clear that Anthony was torn, and that realization cut deeper than any of his lies. Feeling lost and desperate, Luna turned to her best friend, Claire, for support. Claire had been her rock for years, and Luna knew she could count on her to help navigate this nightmare. Together, they decided to confront Aurora. Luna wanted to look the other woman in the eye and demand answers. She wanted to know if Aurora was aware of Anthony's marriage, if she had any idea of the pain she was causing. Claire agreed to go with her, both for moral support and to ensure things didn't spiral out of control. The next day, Luna and Claire arrived at the medical clinic where Aurora worked. Luna's heart pounded as they walked through the doors, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She asked to speak with Dr. Bennett, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. When Aurora appeared, Luna was struck by how ordinary she looked, no villainous smirk or cold demeanor. Just a woman in a white coat, with a polite professional smile. Luna introduced herself as Anthony's wife, and watched as Aurora's face went pale. What happened next shocked Luna to her core. Aurora had no idea Anthony was married. She had been under the impression that he was divorced, a lonely man who had been hurt in the past. Aurora was just as blindsided as Luna, her hands trembling as she listened to Luna's story. She apologized profusely, her voice breaking as she explained that she would never have gotten involved with Anthony if she had known the truth. Luna felt a strange mix of emotions: relief that Aurora wasn't the heartless homewrecker she had imagined, but also a renewed sense of anger toward Anthony for deceiving them both. As Luna left the clinic, she felt a strange sense of clarity. She had the truth now, but it came with a heavy price. Her marriage was in shambles, her trust shattered, and the future felt uncertain. Little did she know, the confrontation with Aurora was only the beginning of a much darker and more dangerous chapter in her life. After the confrontation with Aurora, Luna felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of her was relieved to know that Aurora hadn't knowingly been involved with a married man, but another part of her was furious at Anthony for weaving such an elaborate web of lies. She returned home that evening, her mind racing with thoughts of what to do next. Should she give Anthony an ultimatum? Should she file for divorce? Or was there still a chance to salvage their marriage? The questions swirled in her head as she walked through the front door, but what she found inside stopped her cold. The house was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that felt heavy and unnatural. Luna called out for Anthony, but there was no response. As she moved through the living room, she noticed signs of a struggle: a broken vase on the floor, a chair knocked over, and a faint trail of blood leading toward the backyard. Her heart began to race as she followed the trail, her mind conjuring up worst-case scenarios. When she reached the backyard, her worst fears were realized. Anthony was lying unconscious near the garden shed, his face bruised and bloodied. Luna rushed to his side, her hand shaking as she checked for a pulse. He was alive, but barely. Before she could process what had happened, Luna felt a sharp pain at the back of her head. The world spun as she collapsed to the ground, her vision blurring. The last thing she saw before everything went black was a pair of familiar shoes standing over her shoes she recognized all too well. When Luna regained consciousness, she found herself tied to a chair in the garden shed. Her head throbbed, and her mouth felt dry as she tried to make sense of her surroundings. That's when she saw her. Aurora. The kind, professional doctor Luna had met just hours ago was now a completely different person. Her eyes were cold and calculating, her demeanor calm but menacing. Aurora began to speak, her voice steady as she revealed the truth. She had been the one to attack Anthony, and she had staged the scene to make it look like a break-in. Aurora explained that she had been planning this for weeks, ever since she discovered Anthony's lies. She had grown obsessed with him, convinced that he was the love of her life, and she couldn't bear the thought of losing him. When Luna showed up at the clinic, Aurora saw her as a threat, an obstacle that needed to be removed. Luna listened in horror as Aurora detailed her twisted plan. She had followed Luna home after their confrontation, waiting for the right moment to strike. Her intention was to eliminate Luna and frame Anthony for her disappearance, leaving him free to be with her. Luna's mind raced as she tried to think of a way out, but Aurora was meticulous. She had thought of everything, from the fake break-in to the alibi she had prepared. Luna realized with growing dread that no one would come looking for her, not until it was too late. As Aurora continued to monologue, Luna noticed Anthony stirring in the corner of the shed. He was still weak, but he was alive, and that gave her a glimmer of hope. Summoning all her strength, Luna began to work on the ropes binding her hands. She moved slowly, careful not to draw Aurora's attention, her heart pounding with every second that passed. Just as Aurora turned her back to check on Anthony, Luna managed to free one hand. She grabbed a nearby shovel, her fingers tightening around the handle as she prepared to fight for her life. What happened next was a blur. Luna swung the shovel with all her might, catching Aurora off guard. The two women struggled, the shed filled with the sounds of grunts and crashing objects. Luna fought with everything she had, driven by sheer will to survive. In the chaos, Anthony managed to crawl to the door and call for help. By the time the police arrived, Aurora was subdued, her cold demeanor replaced by a look of wild desperation. Luna and Anthony were rushed to the hospital, their injuries treated as the police began to unravel the full extent of Aurora's plan. What had started as a simple affair had spiraled into a nightmare, leaving everyone involved scarred and forever changed. But for Luna, the hardest part was yet to come, facing the reality that the man she had loved for over 25 years had brought this danger into their lives. The question of whether their marriage could survive loomed large, but for now, all that mattered was that they had survived. The aftermath of the shed incident left Luna and Anthony physically and emotionally scarred. The police had arrested Aurora, and the town was in shock. How could someone so respected, so admired, be capable of such violence? The media descended on the small town, turning the story into a sensational true crime spectacle. Luna and Anthony found themselves at the center of it all, their private lives dissected and scrutinized by strangers. But for Luna, the hardest part wasn't the public attention, it was the quiet moments alone, when the weight of everything that had happened threatened to crush her. Anthony's injuries were severe, but not life-threatening. He spent several days in the hospital, recovering from the beating Aurora had inflicted. Luna visited him, but their conversations were strained. There was so much left unsaid between them, so much hurt and betrayal that neither knew how to address. Anthony tried to apologize, to explain himself, but his words felt hollow. Luna listened, her heart heavy with a mix of anger and sadness. She had loved this man for over 25 years, but now she wasn't sure if she even knew him anymore. As the days turned into weeks, Luna began to piece together the full extent of Aurora's obsession. The police investigation revealed that Aurora had been stalking Anthony for months, tracking his movements, and even breaking into their home on several occasions. She had meticulously planned her attack, down to the smallest detail, convinced that eliminating Luna would allow her to have Anthony all to herself. The more Luna learned, the more she realized how close she had come to losing everything. It was a chilling thought, one that kept her up at night long after the media frenzy had died down. Anthony, for his part, seemed genuinely remorseful. He admitted to his mistakes, to the lies and the betrayal, and begged Luna for another chance. But Luna wasn't sure she could forgive him. The trust between them had been shattered, and she wasn't sure it could ever be repaired. She spent hours talking to Claire, her best friend, trying to make sense of her feelings. Claire listened patiently, offering support and advice, but ultimately, the decision was Luna's to make. In the end, Luna decided to file for divorce. It wasn't an easy decision, but she knew it was the right one. She couldn't stay in a marriage built on lies and betrayal, no matter how much she had once loved Anthony. The process was painful, but it also gave Luna a sense of closure. She began to rebuild her life, focusing on herself and the things that brought her joy. She threw herself into her gardening, her volunteering, and even started a small baking business that quickly became popular in the community. Anthony, on the other hand, struggled to move on. He sold the house they had shared and moved to a different town, hoping to start over. But the guilt and shame followed him wherever he went. He tried to reach out to Luna a few times, but she made it clear that she needed space. Eventually he stopped trying, and the two of them went their separate ways. As for Aurora, she was sentenced to prison for attempted murder and a host of other charges. Her trial was a media circus, with every detail of her twisted plan laid bare for the public to see. Luna attended the trial, not out of curiosity, but to finally put the nightmare behind her. Seeing Aurora in handcuffs, her cold demeanor replaced by a look of defeat, gave Luna a sense of closure. It was over. She could finally move on. The story of Luna, Anthony, and Aurora became a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the most perfect lives can hide dark secrets. For Luna, it was a lesson in resilience and self-discovery. She had faced unimaginable pain and betrayal, but she had come out stronger on the other side. As she stood in her garden one sunny afternoon, surrounded by the flowers she had nurtured back to life, Luna felt a sense of peace. The past was behind her, and the future was hers to shape. And for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful about what lay ahead.